Hello once again, everyone, and welcome back to Fights Through History. So today we're going to be going over Donald McBain's advice for the Shearing Sword. In this case, I'm using a small sword since I don't have a Shearing Sword, but they are not too dissimilar. And specifically, this lesson is meant to show what should happen if you are carrying one of these and come across an individual who is using a basket hilt or broadsword. And in this case, it's a rotella, but Targe, right? Now, first off, a little bit of context for this. When it comes to the mixed weapon stuff, it can be assumed either you're in a battlefield situation, or in this case, this is definitely framed much more around the potential of being mugged. So, for the time period that Donald McBain lived in, that being the late 1600s, early 1700s, Scotland was still a very wild place. In fact, all of the UK and Ireland were quite wild still. If you went out into the Highlands or what have you, there's a decent chance you may be attacked by highwaymen. So, with that in mind, let's start going through the basic advice. So, what McBain says is that if you are carrying a shearing sword and you see a man come up to you using a broadsword and a targe, he recommends that you first put a wet napkin, in this case we're probably meaning like a kerchief or something along those lines, under your hat. You wrap a wet napkin around your neck. Now, obviously if we're at this distance, I'm not going to go, hold on one moment, chap, and attend to that. That's not how that's going to go. But remember, if we're talking about walking around the Highlands of Scotland, they're quite open. If I'm walking down the middle of the road up in the Highlands on the moors, there's probably a good chance that I see Eric coming from a good long while away and realize, okay, this guy may cause some trouble. It's the same sort of thing as like, okay, I feel like crossing to this side of the street right now. Same exact thing. I think there may be trouble. I go ahead and do those initial preliminaries. And all that's doing is I'm putting extra thickness around my vitals. I may still get cut in the face, but it's not like I have a mask handy that I can throw on, right? Now, the next bit of advice, and this is for more close range, and probably if you get taken by surprise, try to create distance and do this. I'm going to take my jacket off of one side of my body. So in this case, I'm representing that with my cloak, because I don't really have a jacket of the period, but they are pretty thick and made of wool. So you take your jacket off and leave basically one sleeve in there, and you're going to wrap it tightly around your arm. Now the idea behind this is exactly the same as using it as a parrying device. I'm just making a big padded oven mitt. Now normally, this would be the part where I say you're not going to catch cuts with this, but with McBain's advice, we are. So we're going to tank a hit here. Now the reason that we're doing that is because coming up against Eric right now, he is not going to throw a thrust as his initial action. With the weapons I have right now, if he throws a thrust at me, I have just as good a chance of parrying that as he does landing it. That's too equal. Instead, if he throws a cut at me, I am much less likely to succeed in parrying that. So a cut is his best bet. Now, what McBain says is that we should keep our left side forward. What does he mean by this? He could mean we're literally just kind of holding this more out. Personally, I interpret it to be more you are standing left foot forward. This, in my opinion, will aid in the action we're about to do. Now, what he says is when the cut comes to your head, catch it upon the arm. Now, what just happened, that was a real cut that had some percussive force. Obviously, I am wearing my gear under this, but that's still gonna suck. If Eric throws it for realsies, that's gonna suck. But the important thing is it wasn't my head. I also moved into it to give myself the best chance of stifling that cut as much as possible. From here, I am instructed to direct a thrust at the eyes. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because I'm prompting Eric to raise his targe because that's the only thing he can. From there, I simply execute a thrust into the stomach underneath the targe, or a cut to the leg. Obviously, this is a small sword, but a shearing sword can still cut. Think like a spadroon, right? There's my hit, still got him locked down. Run that through, put him on the ground. So, he also uses this lesson to illustrate that a targe, if the wearer does not know how to use it, is more a hindrance than a help. In this case, what we're showing is a guy who thought he had all the advantage, got his sword tied up, and relied on his shield. The second you do that, you are just asking to get taken down low with either a cut or a thrust. If he'd been smarter, the appropriate thing would have been to keep distance and bring his sword back into play, so I am not able to perform this. But either way, let's go through the action as written. I'll narrate it first, then we'll just go speed. So, I realize I'm about to come up against a Highlander. I go ahead and present my left side, catch, feint to the eye, through underneath for the thrust, or cut to the leg. Now here is that a little more realistically. Let's go ahead and kind of start back here. So we approach, right? And in this case, because his targe was already so high, I went ahead and just went straight under. So an important thing is that you will come across people that raise their targe just naturally. If that happens, they've already blinded themselves. Go ahead and go right for the middle, but one more time. And even though I was blinded with my cloak, there's still so much of him to hit, and that one would have really sucked, right? There's so much of him to hit, it's pretty hard for me to miss. And I am taking that real blow, and honestly, it's really not that bad. Not saying that it's a great thing, but it's not as bad as it could have been. But either way, thank you very much, Eric. And that was our third now episode of Fights Through History. McBain's a fun one. He's a very unique individual. Certainly not a good person, but someone that has some valuable lessons to learn from. Either way, though, next time we'll be tackling a little bit older stuff, some more personal advice from some older masters. But either way, thank you very much for watching. And we'll go over some other Fights Through History another time.